For the purpose of this lecture, I would really like to focus on 3 genetic disorders that I found interesting. But before I dive into each one, I will begin by explaining the type of mutation corresponding to the disorder. I know I loaded the first lecture video with a lot of information, but I'm just trying to make it easy to understand everything really. So the first is a point mutation. Now this is a mutation affecting either one nucleotide or a few set of nucleotides in a gene sequence. Now this change can be in the form of a substitution where the nucleotides are replaced for a different set of nucleotides, an insertion where extra nucleotides are added to the sequence, or a deletion where some get deleted out of the genetic material. Now this causes a frame shift in the gene sequence where it is read completely different from what it should have been read, like the picture on the screen shows you. So the first disease I will discuss is hyperkalemic periodic paralysis, or HYPP for short. This genetic disorder is as a result of a point mutation in the sodium channel gene. Now let's take a moment here to understand what sodium channels are and how a mutation of this gene can affect a horse. There are holes, or shall I say pores, in the cell membrane of muscles that enable the proper voluntary contraction of the muscles. Now, as you might guess, a mutation of this gene enlarges the pores and causes an excessive and involuntary contraction of the muscles. Therefore, HYPP can lead to sporadic muscle tremors, weakness, paralysis, and collapse. A paralysis attack can be fatal if the affected area is the respiratory muscles or if a heart failure occurs during the attack. Now, the descendants of the American quarter horse sire Impressive have been known to be the vulnerable victims of this defect. Now, let's take a second to watch the paralysis attacks happening to a horse.
The muscles become stiffer and weaker as time passes. Paralysis may also accompany these attacks. Breathing may be loud as a result of the paralysis of the upper airway. In severe cases, death may occur from respiratory muscle paralysis or heart failure. Unfortunately, determining when these symptoms may show up is difficult.
I don't know if you can see that fluttering in her back quarter. It's like almost constant. She is eating, but you can kind of see that in her side. Constant twitching. And then like in her neck here. I don't know if I can get a good picture of that.
It is believed to be a natural mutation that occurred as a result of evolution. However, it became widespread as a result of breeders' desires to produce horses with heavy muscles. And as we all know, the American quarter horse is very famous for its athleticism and well-muscled beauty. Impressive was an exceptional horse and the first horse in his breed to become an AQHA world champion open age halter stallion. It is his muscular and refined form that led him to sire 2,250 foals and about 55,000 living descendants as of 2003. I find it very interesting that Impressive never showed any symptoms of the HYPP disease. However, all horses, I repeat, all horses with the disease have been traced back to this stallion, Impressive. What makes it even more interesting is the fact that HYPP is an autosomal dominant mutation. It requires only one parent to have the gene and pass it on to the offspring, and it does not skip generations. One homozygote parent will result in all offspring carrying the defected gene. So while it may seem that some horses exhibit little to no signs of the disease, it is not possible for it to get diluted, in quote, contrary to what some people might believe. However, some affected horses show little to no signs or symptoms through their lifetime, and while some others experience it frequently. HYPP is known to be triggered by high potassium levels in the blood, also known as hyperkalemia, stress, general anesthesia, lack of exercise, or a concurrent illness. Research has also shown that younger horses tend to experience more attacks than older ones, but reasons for this remain unknown. Based on these triggers, some methods of preventing HYPP attacks are to feed your horse several times a day, because lack of food for long periods of time can cause the potassium level to spike up in a situation where they are fed those potassium-rich foods. Another suggestion would be to avoid these potassium-rich foods in general as much as possible. These include beet molasses, canola oil, alfalfa hay, and so on. Giving your horse access to a large pasture rather than keeping it confined in a small stall will also improve its exercise habits. If the attacks are still happening frequently after years of maintaining a good diet and exercise routine, then several drugs can be prescribed to prevent the paralysis. However, that's something that one would need to discuss with your doctor, with your vet. It is still unknown whether or not other bloodlines carry the HYPP trait or not, but descendants of impressive are recommended for testing always.